one, like you say, call him Robin of Locksley or something a bit more like slightly ambiguous.
Live design happening right here, folks. Let's go. But he's just a king, and it's like, oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? Hold on, what do you mean just a king? Listen, guys, we got demigods, we got gods, we have. I mean, and the other thing is like, how strong is their legend? That's more what you should be thinking about when you're thinking about like their rarity. Who do you think should join Robin Hood?
I hope Simon and Dan don't make it this far into the podcast. I hope they never see this discussion.
Live event we'd like to run.
Spoilers.
So I mean, we
have to edit that out. Are we leaking that? Come on, Dirk. Come on.
Nothing officially leaks. Just just talk about generalities.
You never know what you're gonna get in the Fateless podcast. You never know what's gonna leak. Hey everybody, welcome to this week's Fateless Podcast episode. We're going to be joined by Dane, Sham, and Dirk, and we wanted to quickly wrap up some of the thoughts from the GDC trip out to California, where a few of us were able to head out there to an in-person event, and then also talk about, we had a big video recently that Simon released leaking our first faction that we've gone live with in a video with the Aru. So we're going to talk about some of your comments, positive and negative, and some of your concerns and some of the thought processes that are going into that. So Sham, would you like to kick us off, wrapping up GDC, how all the meetings and connections and everything kind of went out there?
I mean, you guys tell me. You guys were there as well. Obviously, the connections and the meetings were outstanding. Like, I don't think it could have really gone any better. Like, so many great connections. We got to meet up with the team at Magic Media. Got to meet our creative director for the first time. The executive art director at Magic Media. Got to hang out with a bunch of their crew. Actually, that was awesome. And I mean, honestly, everything about all the meetings that we had, it couldn't have gone any better. I don't know how else to say it.
You didn't even give us the backstory about your fancy new banner. You didn't even.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Drop the banner. Nice.
Yeah, no, we won this. Dan put us up for a spot at this Pocket Gamer event, this pre GDC actually event, and we kind of weren't really exactly sure like how useful it was going to be, like what types of other groups were going to be there, how indie it was going to be versus people looking for where it's publishing or if investments, stuff like that. Obviously, we're in kind of a different spot than we might have been if we hadn't done the raise already. So we weren't really sure how important it was going to be, but it ended up being such a great stepping stone. We met up with the guys at Stash, Justin Kahn and Archie. We got to meet up with a lot of other, really excited and interested, I guess, creators in the space, other people that are kind of developing, creators not from the perspective of YouTubers, but creators in the respect of developing games, hearing like what they're doing, seeing what they're doing in Unreal Engine 5 or if they're doing stuff in Unity and getting creative with some of the shaders. I don't know. It was that part was awesome, but obviously we had this beautiful banner there, and we can just leave it there. so we packed it up. We had the organizer pack it up, and then I carried it along.
Yeah, I got to thinking. I was like, what are we doing with this? We're just gonna leave this. And so I asked the person that was running it. I was like, do you care if we take our banner? And he was like, I would love it if you took your banner.
Please.
He probably has to store all of these everywhere, like every year. He's probably like, I would love it if you just take it. So he literally packed it up for us. He's like, I'll pack it up for you. Here you go. Like, and now it's in Chicago with Sham.
Yeah, it's gonna be my backdrop. Very professional backdrop, as you can see. Now it's replacing the we're adding to the raid boss and the art, the professional art that we have up behind me. But I love it. It's pretty sweet, actually. It's the first time we put it up was for this. But what about you guys? How did you guys enjoy the trip?
Yeah, Dane, go ahead, Sham. Who do you want to take over?
Yeah, Dane. What did you think?
GDC is an odd beast because, well, it's developer centric. Like, I think we think of big conventions, we think of like E3 or the PAX East, PAX West, PAX whatever. And that's just a very different crowd, a very different energy, and generally a different purpose. So the floor of GDC is often extremely specific in terms of vendors offering a software solution or a type of rendering, utility. So you kind of have to really pick and choose. The biggest benefit was that everyone else who's in the industry doing stuff like we're doing is there, and they're available to meet in person. And obviously, I mean, there's also that huge disparity between, let's say, the little indie award winners, and they had 20 or so kind of very specific categories where they excelled in, and they had a lot of neat ideas. And then you go to showrooms over, and it's like Unreal and Epic, and they have these like 3-story tall booths, and
Tencent,
yeah, it's like it doesn't feel like they belong in the same place, so it's just, you just have to navigate that. But obviously, I remember Simon saying, or Hell Hades, after our first meeting, it went so well. Well, us, it's basically Sham and Simon. Like, this could have been worth the whole trip. This meeting on its own, because when you talk about getting proper vendors for animation and cinematics or modeling or whatever aspect of the game you want to develop, if you get a deal locked down, you could save millions.
Yeah.
So even if your trip costs you, I'm just throwing out numbers with no education, but like $24,000 to get everyone there and do all this stuff, and you saved millions with a good handshake. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to parse that. When you say like how the trip goes, it's really hard to parse that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my take.
Dirk, what do you think?
Dirk can tell us about his.
GDC was great. So third GDC been to, I think, same for you, Sham. Kind of felt like it was like a nice culmination of all our GDCs we've been to. And I guess the fun part of this one is going into it, like what Dane was saying. I guess if you don't know, GDC, Game Developer Conference, it's mostly meant to be like almost a tech show for the industry. But you do get a lot of just small indie games that are just showing off the game, hoping to score a publisher or something. So we in the past have been that small indie studio trying to get published, and it's like all the connections we made along the way doing previous GDPs sort of paid off, because it gave us great connections for not only have the game that is funded thanks to the community. We got to kind of move on to the next step, and the next step was just meetings with people that we had connections before that are like, oh, well, we can help you out this way, and you weren't expecting this, but it go way better than you think. So like we got some fantastic cinematics that'll be coming along in the future. And then who knows, even some other connections like possible computers for a live event we'd like to run.
Spoilers.
So I mean, the
AR?
AR?
We have to edit that out. Are we leaking that? Come on, Dirk. Come on.
Nothing officially leaked. Just just talking about generalities.
You never know what you're gonna get in the Fateless podcast. You never know what's gonna leak.
There was that guy. I don't know who's doing the AR thing. He's got a documentary going. Like,
oh yeah,
that'll probably come into play in the future in some way we don't expect. So it's just, I don't know. It's just fun to bump into people, kind of almost without a plan, and then just like it takes you in ways where it's like, oh man, well, this paid off 7 years later. Like, so yeah, it's just a good event to go to. Like, obviously, just networking in the industry, and I guess it's a small industry, so like you bump into the same people. Like, we just ran into random people that we saw 7 years ago. Like, hey, I still remember you. Like, how are things going? And so, yeah, great time going. Look forward to doing them maybe more regularly in the future, starting with the next years where we got exciting things planned. That was another big part of what we're going for.
I was worried he was going to go off the rails.
What's happening?
Sham was ready. Sham was ready.
We did go there with the intention of like, okay, so when we start going into a marketing phase and we want to start promoting our game, what do we want our booth to be like? And there was a lot of examples of different booths there. Obviously, the small indie ones. What makes a booth stand out? And we've got some ideas. I think our booth will be pretty fun. So starting next GDC and probably even next TwitchCon before then, just if you guys are going to be at any of these events, definitely find the Fateless booth, and you'll I think it'll be a spectacle. You won't even have a hard time.
They won't have to find the Fateless booth.
They won't have to find it. It will find you.
You'll be summed to it. So
That's right. Yeah, it's one of those things. I think my philosophy I remember us, having a discussion, and I kept getting the same question from Simon and Dan. They were like, "So, what's our goal for GDC?" And I was like, "Listen. Step one is we want to get together as a group. Okay, it's great to meet in person. Great to get to know each other a little bit better. We're fully remote team. Those of you that know that don't know that we're fully remote. Dirk and I are relatively close, but we still just sit at the computer, all day and connect that way. But getting to be in person with somebody is huge. So that was one aspect, right? Is bonding.
You guys might not know this, but Hell Hades pretty darn funny in real life too. So there's a lot of there's jokes all around in this studio.
Hades is a crack up, man.
Even Dan, you guys, that's another one. You guys look at Dan all serious and looking like he needs a hug or something, but guys, it's just bam, 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 bam. So if you find
he's jokes left and right, exactly
within the game, that'll find a way to sneak in. I'm going to blame Dane, but it's kind of
it's hard to do them in a meeting because it's very disruptive. And it's really disruptive to all the non-native English speakers. There's always that
we're in a safe space here, Dane. You can say whatever you need.
Yeah, but I mean, even with Hell Hades, there's times where he's like, "Is that just a thing Americans say, or is that meant to be funny?" Or no, I've recognized it, but
guys, if you haven't already razzed Hell Hades about this, he hasn't seen Office Space. Okay, and I this is a spoiler. This is something the community needs to come together with an outrage. Like I need you guys to be putting out messages on this one wherever you find us. Are you kidding? You haven't seen Office Space?
No, I do want to segue. And so, speaking of differences, I guess between even just Americans and British, when it comes to lore, is we look at Robin Hood as being this badass hero of the people, standing up to tyranny, fighting back against the man. Robin Hood is awesome. He had so many good movies, especially with Kevin Costner. But even the
Fox
is the funny one. Even that's a pretty good movie.
Yeah.
And so we've been pushing to get Robin Hood in the game pretty hard. And meanwhile, Simon and Dan, Hell Hades and Fixian, they look at Robin Hood as being more like a meme.
And Saf, I think Saf's in that same boat.
Yeah, they look at him as he's a joke character. We're like, no, this guy's cool. And there was kind of trying to figure out no, we really do think he's cool. And they
I thought we were just messing with them.
Warm them up to it, and they're kind of coming along. So that's why we put it up to a poll. So we're glad that everyone got to express their point of view in that poll.
What was the final results?
It's our most. I've been kind of running the community polls for a while. It's our most voted on poll. I think is the thoughts on Robin Hood. Ended up being 32% legendary, 46% epic for Robin Hood in the game. So
I would have had it legendary, but epic, totally makes sense given the fact that legendary is usually reserved for more deities and whatnot. It's hard to put a guy who's just wearing tights up in that category, but part of it is kind of based on the myth or the legend of that character. So Robin Hood's just a guy. At least in America, his legend is quite large.
Pretty strong,
par, in my opinion, on par with some of these deities. But
it's a great segue, Dirk, because I want to talk about some comments people were leaving. We don't just want the positive comments; we want the feedback as well. And we had some people leaving comments on things like, "How in the world is someone like Ramses a rare?" or "How is so and so an epic?" And I wanted to maybe talk about that topic in terms of how we're trying to break down these different rarities. And Sham, did you want to go ahead and jumpstart that?
Yeah, I mean, the big thing, I think it's kind of what Dirk just touched on, right? It's while Ramses is a badass, right? Let's get it out there. We know he's a badass. He's awesome, but he's just a king. And it's oh, what do you mean? What do you mean? Hold on. What do you mean just a king? Listen, guys, we got demigods. We got gods. And the other thing is how strong is their legend? That's more what you should be thinking about when you're thinking about their rarity, not just how well known they are. It's in their own mythology. If it is a mythology, and Grand Ramses is not exactly a myth, but you know what I'm saying. Where are they at? Right? Are they praying to gods? Do they have people that they rely on, stuff like that? So that's kind of the way we were thinking about it, because I think you're going to see this a lot. Like when we start to put out some of the factions, you're going to be like, hang on, you've got this guy at an epic or a rare or whatever. It's tough, man. It's tough out there with the number of characters, and we don't have an exact number, but we've got a fair number of champions that we want to release with. But with that number of champions, even with a large number, it's tough because there's, you can't have 25 out of 40 champions be legendary. It just doesn't work, right? It wouldn't really be fun. You wouldn't be able to collect everybody and that type of stuff. So, and just remember, rare doesn't mean worthless. That's the other kind of thing that I would kind of harp on. It specifically does not mean worthless. Like rare, I mean, really, we want all the champions to have some place in the game. They might not be the best, but they'll have some place in the game that's really, they're at least competent. And then as you get up higher, they might be even the best. Like let's say, rare plus, they can shine in these different content or pieces of content in the game. So, Ramses might not be versatile everywhere, but he's going to be strong. He's going to be awesome. Like, so he's going to be as awesome as he looks.
He'll be as good as he looks cool.
Yeah. That's the standard, right?
We're not wasting our effort making these characters look cool if they're just going straight to the bin.
Well, but if you think about it too, I mean, that's an interesting example. And some of this stuff is also, we're still working through elements of our production pipeline and how things need to look. And, a lot of these characters from ancient civilizations just wear cloth robes and drapes and things that aren't that interesting. And we're like, we got to dress that up. We got to make it cool. We know we're not trying to be historically accurate. We're trying to be evocative. And Ramses was one where he's just a guy. And we're like, no, let's dress it up. Let's make his skirt, add scarabs. This is stuff we had to send back to Magic Media. But at the same time, and he came back even better than we expected. There's a different artist working on it, and
Walter,
that guy
crushing it, man.
Yeah, he got it, and put the work in. And Ramsey looks really cool, but he's still just a guy. Like we had earlier things where we took one of our most basic characters, codenamed Nariel, who is just like this lame archer, like elvish kind of archer in leather. And we had to go like, well, what would she be like if she was epic? What would she be like if she's legendary? Not a god of any particular sort, but and what sort of accoutrements and ties to divinity and weapons. And we figured that stuff out. So I think when you talk about, say, Ramses, who looks very good, compared to Leonidas, who I believe is an epic, right?
Yep.
And you could arguably say looks more basic. And if you're like, what gives? Well, I think the underlying design for Leonidas doesn't really allow, one, he was an earlier character. We're still working through stuff. But his design doesn't really allow for too much like embellishment on the core
shirtless dude with a cape and a helmet. I mean, this guy, he's going to look badass, but he's not going to have like a billion things, right?
But we still have the room for that, because when he does his moves, like Heartseeker or whatever, it's like all these sort of like gladiator, or let's say Spartan type moves. They're obviously going to seem more powerful, and they'll have more impact on the field than Ramses would. So just their appearance isn't the only avenue we have for describing their power level, their desirability in terms of a collectible hero. So I just keep that in mind too.
Well, and Brad, what's your take on this? So I mean, we can hop away from Ramses because we've had a couple of them where there's a question around which characters, because I think I see Ramses, but I know that people were talking about like not Anubis, Osiris was one where people were saying like, oh, he should be legendary. It's like, well, what's your take on it? I'm interested to hear like your perspective.
Because we get into these different cultures and mythologies and stuff, and they'll have like 18 people that we think should be legendary. We're like, oh, the story is so amazing, but we can't come out the gate, with 240 legendaries. Like it's just not going to happen. We'd have to have a roster of 1,200 champions. So we have to split hairs and we have to make tough decisions on like, well, we would love so-and-so to be a legendary, but we don't have space to have 40 legendaries in this faction. So we have to pick some epics and some rares. And yeah, there's just, I mean, like no matter who we end up putting down an epic or rare, you're going to feel like that. Like, wait, what? How is so-and-so an epic? Like, it's kind of unavoidable, unfortunately. But like Sham said, we do want rares and epics to be playable in our game. And we're going to have areas where you'll need to use rares, you'll need to use epics, so they will still be collectible, and you will still definitely have motivation to build these really cool champions that aren't necessarily only legendaries.
A little more accessible too. Like if you think about it, we've got a character like that. You know, we can there will definitely be epics that are around the power. Like they're upscaled epics, right? So not every single epic is going to be exactly this little box of power and okay, their moves can do exactly this thing. There's going to be, you know, like a spectrum. So there's going to be some characters where you're going to be like, wow, this is a really strong hero that is quite versatile, right? Strong isn't the only thing that you're really concerned with here. It's quite versatile. And that just means it's more accessible. That means that you have more opportunities for interesting groups that aren't just made up of only, you know, X number of legendaries. It's, you know, maybe you've got some epics in there, maybe you've got some rares, maybe even you've got some like pairs going on with like an uncommon, maybe even a common. Maybe you guys will see
strong common too. That's more appropriate.
Oh, I can't wait for that character to come out. Like that's like the spoiler that I want to spoil.
Are you guys talking about
Tutankhamun? It's so hard.
What's that?
You guys talking about Tutankhamun?
Oh,
yeah, see, here it is.
This is what we're talking about.
Here it is.
Who's he going to pair with?
Another comment I've seen kind of floating around in Discord and YouTube and stuff is people wondering like the body type. Like why does every male model look like a male model? Like, you know, why are they always like the muscular dude? And some of like the how our creature is going to look, how our female is going to look, how our different types of males going to look. Maybe this is a question for Dane as kind of the art side of things. But what would you say to someone who's saying like, why do all the men look like Leonidas? Like why are they all muscular dudes?
Yeah. One thing, so I'll address that, but also I think there's other comments kind of in the ether about, let's say, the nature of the Aru tribe that was presented, and a lot of the criticisms or observations that are coming in have already really been reflected internally. We're aware of it too, and we're actually at a stage where we're starting to diversify the body types. And you might say, well, why didn't you do that from the start? And that really comes down to process. Like when we have so many characters that we need to develop and send, you know, out the door at first launch, there's efficiencies you have to consider. And you reuse body types, you reuse certain types of armor, certain types of weapons that you can, you know, remodel a little bit, because a spear is a pointy thing on a stick, but how you know, differentiate that from character to character. So to get that process down and efficient, we sort of picked the most generic video gamey hero body type for men and women, and made sure that we could iterate that and still get different designs out. So a lot of the designs do look very similar because they're in the same body type. They're wearing the same type of armor, you know, chest, waist, bracer, helmet. And not every hero is going to be like that. And just now we're working on Imhotep, and he's more of a scholar, a philomath character. And, you know, we have to, at this point now we're like, okay, we need to develop a different body type. It doesn't make sense for him to be like that. He'll still be heroic, right? But, and then once we've got that seed, that little hub of a character base, all the other characters that would have a similar body type, we can start spawning off that.
Yeah.
So it is a thing that comes up, but it's just the order that we're doing things in, and we want to make sure we got the basics done first. But we do have like body diversity from like even a like artistic, interesting sense, not like some representational necessarily get stuff in there that shouldn't be in there in a faction. We just want, lots of different characters. I mean, Simon brings this up a lot, like, oh, we got to get monsters and creatures, and we do have creatures in the pipeline. But yeah, it's just the order that we did things. Is we did kind of the most basic stuff first, and then we'll move on, because you got to make sure, because if everything you do is an exception, you don't really have a good baseline for whether you're doing a good job or not.
Yeah, it's really the same thing, the same way that we're now. So we're actually having to do this almost again, where we just had a meeting around animations, and it's kind of that same thing, right? If we were like, well, let's just build bespoke animations for every single ability, like that could be, high hundreds or even thousands of these animations, and that's just not realistic, right? No one does that. You basically will have like really cool animations that you'll start with, then you can sometimes we'll piece them together into almost a new animation, and you'll add VFX, and then it's basically a whole nother thing. Or sometimes you'll have like a character, it's a, let's say it's a Spartan, and we've got the same spear jab or something that we've used on other places. Well, that feels pretty comfortable for a character of that level, since people probably, maybe not for Spartan, but for certain characters, you might not be using them as much. So, having to find that core, and like Dane was saying, that core of the basics, the core building block of these characters, that's what you have to start with, so that then later, when you find something where it's like, oh, I really want this guy to be interesting or different, or oh, this, going back to the body types, I really want just a huge, hulking, giant belly. Okay, well, where can we use that again? Where's another spot that we can use it, so that we can have like a couple of characters that fit into that body type, so people, so that we can sell the fantasy of whatever this character is, but B, just so we have a variety of like looks. Not everyone just looks like, oh, we copy paste, this little section. And I guess maybe one thing you didn't mention, Dane, and you can just talk maybe more about this a little bit, but we've got that paper doll concept, and it is really it is taking something, boiling it down into like a quick concept, so that we can get the idea, and then we follow that up with a final concept, with an actual concept based on the paper doll. But yeah, go ahead.
Well, the first thing I was going to say is, I don't want to make it sound like, oh, don't bother criticizing us, we've already thought about it. No, because go ahead and say the stuff. Just rest assured, we are thinking about things pretty comprehensively, and I think that'll be demonstrated as new material gets released. But there's always something we might miss. So, if some of this stuff, like, yeah, okay, yeah, I know. Someone's like, Anubis should have a dog face. I'm like, yeah, I know, we're working on it. Which kind of ties into the paper doll thing, because this is basically a very layered Photoshop file where you're swapping in parts and stuff that we've already created to try to create a new character. And there can be a bit of homogeneousness to those designs. And some of the stuff that's been shown is that first pass. It actually hasn't been refined. It hasn't been sent to like one of our superstar artists, Esther, on Magic Media side, who kind of takes those slightly boring or cliche or a bit too copy pasted together designs, and usually based on our feedback. She normally has her own pass. Like, she'll be like, she knows what's bad about it, and we'll fix it. We take a look at it and try to push it closer to our visual goals. But that is just, again, it's a production thing, it's an efficiency thing, and you're always battling on a project like this, pure artistic vision and all the wouldn't it be cool ifs, quote, wouldn't it be cool if we had this, wouldn't it be cool if this character could do that, versus what we could actually achieve, in a reasonable amount of time and a reasonable amount of money, to get it done. And the players don't care so much about the second one, because that's translucent to, it's like, oh, well, I'll just get the game out, get new stuff out. But they do want it to be cool, and they want it to be timely. Can't remember talking about just but yeah, there's a little bit to that paper doll thing, and there's with the Egyptian, the Aru faction, we're getting some feedback where people are like, oh, it reminds me of Stargate and those designs, and I'm like, yeah, that's true, but that's not exactly what we're going for. And that is coming through the paper dolls, and there's a little bit of that we like, but there's also a little bit of it that because because what's been presented so far doesn't tell the story of all the factions and how they relate to each other, which kind of circles back to the idea of why are some people rare or epic when they seem like they should be legendary. Well, everyone's familiar with like Egyptian gods generally, but you got to compare that to Mayan gods and Slavic lore and still make all your characters line up.
Yeah.
So it's sensible when you mix and match your teams. Well, just mix, I guess.
Sensible, yeah.
Yeah, it needs to feel cohesive. And if you've got like Zeus, Poseidon, Amaterasu, and Robin Hood, you know, you should probably feel that like one of those is a little different than the others. So
yeah, maybe Amaterasu doesn't really fit that well. But yeah, I mean, going back to that Stargate comment, I mean, I like I mean, that makes me happy in a lot of ways. The people, that's not the direction we don't want, like the space Egypt to like be the Aru. Yeah, exactly. But at least they're not like, oh, these guys look kind of frumpy. You know what I mean? I think the focus is more. I think when you guys see more of a comprehensive, like all of them kind of coming together in that soup, and that grouping them from different factions, grouping them from within the faction, I think that it will feel. I mean, hopefully, it will feel like.
Let me jump in again, just for like. So I'm not dissing the Stargate comment because I love Stargate and I love the impact that those characters had when I saw that movie. The thing I was most disappointed with as a kid was when they hit a button and their like hood went back and it's just like some dude. I'm like, oh man, I really hoped it was like he was just like this weird minotaur chimera creature and he just had a helmet on. So that is one of our like style guides. And we did updates, or I submitted, notes for like say Horus, where he looked just too much like a guy with a mask. I'm like, no. We want that big Egyptian helmet hood thing, like in Stargate, and you don't know what's underneath there. Like, is he a actual god? Is he just a guy with a big helmet? It should feel but alien and freaky, just not sci-fi and not Stargate, because we have all seen that. And we've seen a lot of Egyptian, much like you've seen everything, like StarCraft looks a lot like Aliens and Starship Troopers and stuff. At least certain like the
parts of it, Terran.
Yeah. We want to do stuff that people are like really familiar with and think is cool, but still with a twist. And Stargate's been done. So we want the cool elements from Stargate and just general Egyptian mythology, but we want to bring something new also.
So, and I think we're definitely gonna get there. The thing that I'm kind of wondering with Anubis specifically, I saw people kind of like talking about Anubis, and I do think that right now he's got kind of like an anteater type of vibe going on. I think that part of that is that
I think that he's kind of crossed up their god faces.
This is the anteater guide on
it. Like aardvark anteater face.
Well, it is hard. This is the other problem about like the paper doll, I guess, initially, is that no one really looks that cool straight on, especially if you're trying to like convey what a nose looks like. Like if it's like a beak versus like a
snout or anything,
snout or
form.
It's like, it's like this, and okay, well I don't know that can't really get the depth that well, or even if I could kind of get it just doesn't really read that well. So I think there's two sides of it. One, I'm pretty sure that Alex, who did the initial concept, knew what he was kind of thinking, but it's tough to convey in that frontal image. And I think that once we do that second step that the Dane was talking about, where it's like, okay, here's the concept, right? Here's the concept of the character. Here's a front, here's a side, here's a 3/4 view. Here's like or more like a front, but with like a little bit of a tilt. Here's the weapon. I'm pretty sure you guys are gonna dig it. I'm just guessing based on what we've been getting back
for the Aru faction, but the other fact, like, you're not gonna look at. I don't want to leak anything. We already have like King Arthur doesn't look like he's from Stargate, or Leonidas doesn't look like he's from. You know what I mean? Like each faction will have its own feel. So if all the Aru kind of feel a little Stargatey, that's okay. That's kind of their faction. But then you will see the other ones. Oh, that's something completely different. You look at one faction, and be like, well, that's the faction of Chads. We thought they were.
Don't spoil.
Muscular males, but I guess that was just a Spartan. We didn't know there was going to be a next level up beyond that, and there's a whole faction based around it. So,
but that's a good point, because we have design documents and stuff that talk about the Aru, aka Egyptian mythology, and having technology and designs or metallurgy. This seems slightly beyond their level in civilization. Is part of the design,
part of it, yeah,
but not radically beyond. Not lasers and little robots and stuff. Because it just doesn't fit with the tone of the game. Like the same reason we're not really using steampunk, and we don't have dwarves that are basically and gnomes that are robot engineers. Like that's kind of World of Warcraft stuff. It's more cartoony, and you just got to draw the line somewhere and then work within those lines. And there may be exceptions, but full on spaceship, alien, sci-fi, Egyptian stuff, I think, was just a little bit too far. It didn't fit with the rest of what we're doing. But I think, again, those design cues that come from Stargate that everyone loved, they're very evocative. We are using. It's just tough. You're like, Stargate, no, because when we got people doing the paper dolls, we got people doing the rough concepts. Sometimes you're getting that first layer of what, and the first layer of what everyone already expects. A very cliche, and you got to not discard it, but you just have to like refold it a little. You know what I mean? Like, redo your origami so you make a slightly different shape, but it's the same thing.
I mean, this is the thing. I feel like, and this is we can transition to something that I think I wanted to get a little bit more feedback on. So speaking of cliches and reusing cliches, now that we are, people are excited about Robin Hood potentially being in the game. Obviously, we saw that. Simon and Dan are going to be like, Champ, what happened? What, you went off the rails? What are people? So who else should be in that? I'd love to hear from you guys. So let's say Robin Hood's coming in, right? It can't just be Robin. I mean, it could be, but let's say there was someone else that needed to join him. Who would join him? Brad, who do you think should join Robin Hood?
I hope Simon and Dan don't make it this far into the podcast. I hope they never see this discussion. You mean from the Robin Hood story?
Yeah. So like if we're thinking that, let's say we come in with it's in the mythology, in the Robin Hood mythology, okay? Right? He's got his myth. That's where he's coming from. Who's coming along?
Well, you have to have the guy that didn't Little John train him.
Got Little John. Okay.
Yeah. I feel like you'd have to have that.
All right, Dane. Who else should join him?
I mean, the problem is I've been somewhat swayed by Simon and Dan.
No.
So, because
come on.
When you led this, I thought you were
what a traitor! Get this guy out of the. What's happening?
So okay, I mean, if you want the hot duo, then you get Maid Marian.
Okay, nice.
But she's just a lady, right? She's just a princess. She doesn't have...
what's her A1? You got to think like, all right, if I'm gonna bring this character in, what's her A1?
What's her A1?
Well, that's not
what's her
Dane's
A1?
job.
What's she doing?
That's not
all
Dane's
she does
job.
is
that's Dirk's job.
Yeah.
Provoke. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, she gets
like,
Robin Hood all like hot and sweaty and I don't know, betrays her kingdom. I don't know. It's kind of a difficult A1 to conceptualize.
She turns around and stabs one of your other members. Like, how does this work?
Dane's on like Prince John's side over here. Just
I know.
Dan and Simon. They're all like, oh, there's nothing wrong with the sheriff. He was just trying to collect some taxes.
The sheriff of Nottingham, he's just collecting taxes.
You got to fund all those kingdom projects with the taxes.
But this was an interesting point, because I thought you were going to ask, what other Robin Hoods from people's like childhood and cultures would you suggest?
No Zorros. We know where that's going to go. I don't need that information. I need to know what's happening.
I didn't say like who is your first like awakening character.
Can we please put Zorro in the? Oh my gosh.
I think that's at the level of muskets though. I mean, you guys haven't.
Well, exactly. Is Robin Hood basically on the level of a three musketeer?
No. I don't think so. Although I'm not 100% sure. Bubble. I haven't done the research on this since we were shot down. But I think timing wise, I mean, if you look at the Disney adaptation, it's all bows. If you look at the what's it called? The Costner adaptation, do they have guns?
No.
Yeah.
No,
Good.
it's like so Arthurian stuff.
That's kind of one of our general rules, at least right now, is like that's the we're in the heroic fantasy realm.
Yeah, we're not having like Doc Holliday, you know, like in the
Well, that's the thing, right? Because
that'd be
American
such a
history
good
is so
one, though,
recent.
man.
Like,
even though I would love it. Doc
Yeah.
Holliday is one of my favorites.
But it's just not going to happen for at least in the short term.
Paul Bunyan. That's
Paul, yeah, I know. It was so funny because we were talking about this and we were like, well, so who's the American? Who would, you know, if we were going to say this is America, give us some heroes and some.
America's too recent.
They were like, you're too young.
Yeah, it's too recent.
Fair, I guess.
Yeah, it's fair. It's fair. But I still feel like Robin Hood would be like one, like you say, call him Robin of Locksley or something a bit more like slightly ambiguous.
Live design happening right here, folks. Let's go.
But also like that character in Raid who's clearly Jack Sparrow.
Oh, I don't know his name.
Armand's the Magnificent.
Yeah, maybe he could just be a one of. Like everyone gets it. It's
Dang,
not like,
don't ruin this for me. I'm asking for who what merry gentleman should join him.
I mean, the most other Sheriff of Nottingham is the other.
Yeah, that's the real one.
Friar Tuck. Simon's on board with Friar Tuck.
Yeah, he was talking. We were talking Lego for Friar Tuck.
He's like, well, if we're doing Robin Hood, we're definitely doing Friar Tuck. Like it was like there was no.
Yeah, but it sounds like this decision's been made and they're going against the viewers. Going against the viewers.
Well, no, the viewers said epic for Robin Hood, right?
Yep. Epic or legendary, like 80-something%.
Whoa.
Wow. There you go. That's so the people have spoken. That's
who are our viewers? What are the demographics?
What are the demographics here?
We want to know that because we wanted to see.
It's probably majority European or UK or yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. We got a little bit of a mix, but yeah, not everyone is willing to sit there and be like, I'm from blah blah blah. But so in any case, I mean, I feel like this is like the really fun part about being, you know, hanging out with the community, sharing the journey, asking you about the serious questions and some of the sillier questions. Obviously, Robin Hood is a very serious one. But yeah, I mean, like for me, I'm really glad, and this is, I guess, to round out kind of this discussion. I'm really glad that you guys are taking this seriously and looking at all the stuff that we're putting out and saying like, oh, you know, I really like where you're going with this, but I really wish that they were a Lego or actually, man, he's nothing. Why isn't he a rare? Like he should be below whoever this is. Like that's awesome. I love that. I love that. We definitely do take it into account. We're talking about this like nonstop. Like Simon will be like, the people are uprising about Ramses. We need to have a discussion. And I'm like, okay, let's talk. We need to have a discussion because, you know, we take it very seriously and we, you know, for me, it's important that not that every decision that we make, you're like, yeah, this is perfect, but just that we understand what people are excited about, what they're not that excited about. But yeah, that's my feeling. I'm just really glad that we're getting that feedback, and then we're able to chat about it and laugh about it on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, is there anything we need to cover besides we wanted to kind of respond to the comments and talk about GDC? Am I missing anything that anybody wanted to get out there?
I do think it's funny that Ramses was like where we started.
Because his model looks so good. That's the issue.
Yeah. But it's one of some of the factions, I guess, are just very, very stacked. Like, I'm not leaking when I say we have an Olympus faction, right? The Greek one. That one is like maybe like a quarter of the characters made it in, where it was just like, what about this character? Well, how can you can't not have this one? But you can see that.
Well, like, do we need to put in a comment?
30 characters. Yeah, we need like 2 more of that faction, but we don't want the game to just be like, it's not just Greek myth and legends. You know, we gotta get more global. So
and it's important to shout out that who we launch with, that's not the final roster. Like, you know, over the next 5 years, there's going to be lots of events and summoning banners, and there's going to be really cool heroes that we have to have available for live ops as well. So, you know, they're obviously going to be a lot more.
They're going to love William Wallace then.
That's right. Yeah. There you go.
Well, that's an interesting point, right? Because Ramses is in this weird, interesting midpoint where people feel like maybe he's not been elevated enough, but we don't want to do the opposite. So, like what Brad is saying. And we worked extensively with someone from Magic Media, M. Lawden, who is a professor and knows his history, especially
living
like
Wikipedia, yeah.
ancient civilization history. So when we break down these kind of factions that, you know, roughly relate to cultural mythologies, instead of pushing down like Poseidon to common because he just couldn't fit in. Now let's just say we wouldn't put him to common. We just cut him for now. That's not the real example, but you know, it's like we're not going to just like demote someone who's clearly very powerful to something lower just to get them on the list. We will include things that are maybe less significant, to make sure that the tiers make sense. And some of those other, like, you know, cool characters, they'll come up later. But yeah, we don't want to like disrespect any cool mythologies or characters. And but at the same time, I think that gives us the opportunity and the flexibility to show a lot of these myths and legends that a lot of people probably haven't heard of because they're like, you know, they're a couple layers in.
Yeah.
And especially for like Slavic and rhetorical.
There's so many good spoilers.
Yeah, I'm just saying there's like, yeah, there's cultural groups that everyone knows about, like Greek and Egyptian, and that kind of sucks all the oxygen out of the room. But once you know, make room for all these kind of bit characters, they're a lot of fun. They're interesting. They have interesting stories. They're not creation stories.
They're badass too, man. Some of these characters,
have cool
you're like,
stuff.
holy crap,
Yeah.
I want the character. Oh man, it's I mean, I 100% agree. Like I think that that's a really good way to look at it, because we don't want to demote people or characters that deserve to be legendary or epic. And we're not saying that Ramses doesn't deserve to be epic. He's in that like up or down, right? But he's definitely not a common or an uncommon, right? There's no question. And he's probably not at the level of a legendary. So, you know, sometimes you have to make those choices. You pick one direction or the other. And then later on, we'll bring in some more characters that I think people are going to be really excited about, either from the same faction or potentially from a new faction as time goes on. It depends on the on what you guys are interested in, right? We'll see what people are excited about. And one thing I did want to do before we get out of here is I want to shout out the fact that we usually we come to this like an hour before podcast. We're like, guys, what should we talk about? What is the topic this week? Okay. So this week it would be amazing if you guys could tell us what you want to hear about. What do you guys want to hear about? What do you want to talk about? What's the topic for next week? You know, comment below, send us a message on Discord, find us on a YouTube video, and just tell us hey guys, talk about this and this and this on the podcast. We pretty much, I mean, as you can see, we're pretty open with a lot of stuff. We try not to spoil too much so Dan doesn't have to yell at us. But beyond that, we just like having fun, talking about stuff, talking about you know, what it takes to make a video game. And yeah, so we'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah, it's a good shout, because we're on the inside. So sometimes it's hard to maybe know perfectly what would be the most interesting for you. Like what keens your interest on, like, I wish they would talk about this. I wish they would address this. Let us know down in the comments. Like all the things Sham said, we do poker tournaments, we hang out in Discord. Yeah, let us know your thoughts. But yeah, anything else before that? That was a great shout out.
I don't know, man. Let's get out of here. I think this is perfect.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for joining me, guys, and thanks to all of you for watching this week's episode of the Fateless Podcast. All the links are going to be down below if you want to interact on Discord and reach us any other way. Appreciate all of you. Have a good rest of your day.
See you guys.